Right.
Okay.
It's rolling.
I'll try to keep my question a little pretty broad, so you can pick. Like the first one would be the birth of Zulu Nation. Like what need and what vision created the birth of the Zulu Nation?
Well, the birth of the Universal Zulu Nation was started in the year 1973. Came from the experience of what was going on before that time period, from the 60s, when you had the civil rights, human rights movement that was happening with black people, or so-called black people who are really Moors, who was fighting for their liberation and freedom in the 60s for what was going on in the United States as well as the rest of the world, especially, dealing with apartheid in South Africa and then some. So when everything happened from the Malcolm X, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, and Al-Said Imam Isa Hakti Al-Mati, better known as Dr. Malachi Z. York, and the Ansaru Allah community, all these different movements that was happening at that time, thus came the birth of this next movement, with the birth of hip-hop with the Universal Zulu Nation. And I got to organize and to bring this birth about from seeing a movie back in the 60s featuring Michael Caine called Zulu, to see the Africans fighting for what was theirs in their land against the poll tax from the imperialism of the British Army that came to take control of what was in there. So thus came the birth of our Universal Zulu Nation, which stands for knowledge, wisdom, understanding, freedom, justice, and equality, peace, unity, love, and having fun, overcoming the negative to the positive, science, mathematics, facts, and the oneness of the Supreme Force, whether we call him or her Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, Elohim, Jah, or many other names, or the ancients of the ancients' names, or Tum, and Ra.
And had you the idea that all the other political forces, as you named, like a Nation of Islam or the 60s movement, Black Panther movement, that it needed like something new on top of it, or a new creation combined with hip hop? Was that the basic idea, maybe?
Well, it was basically we was taken from all the ideologies that we heard before us, and then also influence of the music that was strong for us, like the great God of soul, James Brown, the King of Soul, and the gods of Black Rock, Sly and the Family Stone, and then Parliament, Funkadelic with George Clinton, and as well as John Lennon and all the people who was fighting for civil and human rights at the time. So we just put all these ideologies together, and thus came the birth of the Universal Zulu Nation. And we say universal, meaning that we talking about our universe, not just of Mother Earth, but of all the different planets and all the different stars and solar system in our universe and beyond.
The fact that you were suspected by intelligence services or something like that?
Well, you have that all the time. Anybody that takes a stand to organize or unite people, there's always something or some secret society or organization that might want to watch what's going on with this new group on the scene. And, you had that same period when we had all the street gangs and the street organization that was running all over the place at the time. So when you try to unite many of these groups to stop the violence and killing in their neighborhoods, to become warriors for causes, then that starts to always ring somebody's ears somewhere.
Like the unification or the unity of the five elements of hip hop, was it like an idea to read together all elements, cultural elements together, or is there like a natural bond that connects graffiti, MCing, DJing that you just grabbed and named it?
Yeah, well, I was seeing all this that was happening before what we called hip hop, and decided to make this as a cultural movement. So I decided to take all the different elements, as we called it in the Universal Zulu Nation, and put them together. So we brought the B-boys and the B-girls together. We brought the graffiti or aerosol writers together. We brought the MCs or what you call rappers together. We brought all the DJs together. Then we had that fifth element that holds it all together, which is the knowledge. As we say in Universal Zulu Nation, knowledge, culture, overstanding.
And maybe like to the year 1980, that's what we really or mostly try to dwell on. Like when suddenly like the downtown world and the white world discovered hip hop, discovered the culture that was going on in the Bronx and in Harlem. How did you witness that time? Like maybe when we the Sugar Hill, when they had their first commercial breakthrough. How did you witness that? How did you see that?
Well, Sugar Hill was like a good 9 to 10 years after what we was doing already in the Bronx. So we was bringing many other communities together, which I was playing a lot in the punk rock new wave scene downtown. You know, I was asked to play in the Grills and the Jeffersons, and then Danceteria, and then end up at the most famous club of all of them, the Roxy's. And so I was bringing together the punk rockers, who was the first of the so-called white people to come together and party with the so-called black people. So we got together. It was the music that brought everybody together under that universal language. Something what the great Sly and the Family Stone did with their music by bringing both cultures together.
Like a guy also like very important to the punk movement, Malcolm McLaren, also a guy that you encountered. Can you describe or tell us like how you met him?
Well, Michael McLaren came to see us over at the Bronx River Neighborhood Center, the Housing Development Project. They had us play, and he came to witness myself and many of my other DJs, DJ Jazzy J, Red Alert, and a couple other groups that we had out there. And when he seen us, he got magnificent. So he got crazy, and he said, I want you to come down and play with my group Bow Wow Wow. And he asked me, did I know about them? He also knew about the Sex Pistols with John Lydon and Sid Vicious and all them. So he asked me to come and play at the great Ritz. So I came down and we performed, and that's when the Rocksteady crew, B-Boys, they became part of the Universal Zulu Nation, and we just put on a whole B-Boy, B-Girl hip-hop show. And from then on, it just started spreading from place to place as we started taking it over to Europe. It was Europe 1 Radio that sponsored us to take the trip over and present it to France and England, and then the rest of the world.
Maybe I want to come back to that later. Maybe Afrika Islam, we met him in Hamburg. He's like a regular DJ, and I think in Moon too, Charlie Funk. Mm-hmm. And you've been there also, like I think recently. Mm-hmm. Can you describe or explain us like how Charlie Funk or Afrika Islam, how you encountered him, like with the Rocksteady crew, how he got part of the whole movement?
Well, that's one of my sons of Bambaataa. He's been there way before the Rocksteadies, years before that. So he's part of the Universal Zulu Nation, and he always understands the funk. He lives by the funk. He is the funk. He's the all God of the funk. So when he's with the God of the funk, which is myself, coming from the gods of the funk, from James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, George Clinton, Parliament, Funkadelic, we be all funk.
Like the Roxy's, maybe coming back to the Roxy's, what was the Roxy really about? Was it about, you said, like the music, but what else? Like there's the interracial, like black people getting together with white people, like the racial borders getting down. Was that also a part that attracted people to come to overcome racial borders?
Well, it's definitely brought international community was the Roxy. So it was all nationalities and all races who was partying under one roof, one nation under the groove in the Roxy. So the Roxy was definitely the meeting place for all people to come and get their party on, you know, to enjoy this new phenomenon, what was called hip hop, that was happening on the downtown scene, along with hearing many of the punk rock and new wave music that was being played at the time. So you might hear Human Lead and Kraftwerk and Gary Newman, along with George Clinton, Barcades, Aretha Franklin, the Jackson 5. So it was a party on the mothership.
Did you embrace that all these English haircut groups that came over, Duran, all that? Did you like that? Did you play that also?
I played all that. I played from Adam Ant to Susie and the Banshees and to the Sex Pistols and added our flavor of the funk to it, and then I started getting a larger punk rock following who started following me up back into the Bronx parties and started coming among the hip hop people. And at first people was nervous. They thought it would be a racial violence and all this type of stuff that would go at each other. But when they heard that music, when they heard that James Brown, all they want to know how to do that punk rock stomp. And many of the hip hop was trying to learn how to do the punk dance, which the dance came out called the punk rock that many of the hip hoppers was doing. And the punk rockers that was slam bangers started learning how to do all the hip hop dances.
And one guy also who took us around a little bit in the club scene, Michael Holman. Are you aware of the guy? Was he a guy like who cross-bordered?
No, Michael Holman and Kool Lady Blue and Fab Five Freddy are one of the first threes that brought the hip hop scene to the downtown scene and mixed it and matched it up with all of us together. So all of us had a major role in playing and bringing, many people together to party downtown as well as around the world and making the Roxy an international club.
Planet Rock, like Kraftwerk. Do you remember the day you picked that album and to listen for the first time? Did you hear, oh God, that's full of funk, I gotta do something with it? That really kicked you?
Well, that's back in the year '77 when I was digging in the crates that I seen this album cover with 4 white guys on it that looked a little strange. I said, I was heavy into many of the different album covers that was happening at the time. So what grabbed me, if you had a wild-looking cover or just something out of the ordinary, and I decided to take it home. And when I heard it, I said, "Whoa, this is some new space age type of funk here." So what I did is start playing it on my audience, and my audience was one of the progressive-minded audience of all hip-hop audience. So others like Grandmaster Flash or Kool Herc or who else came after us used to wait to see if my crowd would give that okay on it before they go and start playing all these other wild scene records.
And like the idea to come up with Planet Rock was already what you already described, like really the idea to bring funk to the universe, not even to our place, but abroad?
Well, I took that sound of the techno pop that was happening with Kraftwerk, Yellow Magic Orchestra, and Gary Newman, and also Dick Hyman, and my man John Carpenter that do the Halloween movies, because he gave me permission to make a Bambaataa theme out of one of his first movies, Assault on Precinct 13. And so I took all what they was doing with the technopop sound and added the funk of James, George, and Sly, and thus became the birth of the electro funk sound of Afrika Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force.
Like, how important is that this electronic dance movement combined to the funk for the whole development of the dance music scene?
Well, it's very important now because from the Planet Rock sound or the electro funk sound, thus came the birth of your Miami bass, your Rio funk, your trip hop, your drum and bass, the hip house, many now what they call electronica or electro. So, Planet Rock played a major role in bringing all these different musics out, as well as it is the most sampled record in all of hip hop history. And
you already mentioned it, Johnny Lydon, Word Destruction, which also brings us to the political part of the 80s. What was that about, that you suddenly really came up with a tune with the punk guy, not only sampling but even producing it together?
Well, that was the first rock hip-hop record out, even preceding Walk This Way by Run DMC. And I was over in France and I seen this movie called The Man Who Saw Tomorrow, which was about the predictions of Nostradamus. So I wanted to make a record that speak particularly to white people, because that's when all this stuff was going on with the Star Wars of Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and all of them was getting crazy with what they was doing in England. So I wanted to make a record that will speak to Europeans and to the Americans and let them know you're going heading towards world destruction, and speak about the predictions of this man called Nostradamus. So I tried to look for a singer that would be radical to work with me. And my producers, Bill Laswell of Material, said, what about John Lydon of Public Image? And I knew about him from Sex Pistols and the Public Image. So I decided to work with him, and thus became another hit record for me under the name of Time Zone called World Destruction.
Like by 1984, Ronald Reagan was in office like for 4 years. Can you describe a little bit what happened, or at least to your neighborhood, to the Bronx, South Bronx, to Harlem, how his 4 years in office affected the landscape?
Well, he was, most white people was in love with him, and then there was others that started hating him as the years went by, and most people of color couldn't stand him because he was doing so much dealing with taxes, or they was too much worrying about all the different wars that was happening. That's when MTV was coming on strong. They really didn't want to play the video that we did, but we won out against Boy George's War and Peace, that many people started loving our song. And that's when they really wasn't playing a lot of black videos on these stations. So it was people from Epic and Sony Records who put the pressure on them. That's when they started playing Michael Jackson's Driller video, which became a big hit for MTV. So with World Destruction and Reagan and Thatcher and all the other violence that was happening on our planet, then we was also talking about the big Star Wars system. He was talking about what if we all got together and fought some threat that was coming from outer space. And that just started opening the ears of all the people in the UFO or ufologists that was saying, what is this man talking about, making something to put up in space to fight off some extraterrestrials or aliens that might attack the planet. So, and that became the whole ufology part of the Zulu Nation that started coming in to play.
In the mid 80s, also at least in the graffiti scene, I think, and also in the music scene, there was like a certain point. Really, could you say that at a certain point, old school was really over at a certain point?
The old school was never over. I mean, you had your old schools and you had the new schools, but so we started making it all be part of the true school. So you had the people, it was starting to cause a split, what we call apartheid in hip hop. So you had the people who followed hip hop culture that love all the elements of hip hop. Then you had the people who just follow what was happening now with certain rappers that had certain hits.
Talking about Def Jam, and then really like diversifying, grabbing out the rap music and bringing it to all sorts of people. How did you see like the emergence of a label, a black-owned label like Def Jam?
Well, Def Jam, when it first came out, it wasn't black-owned. It was owned by Rick Rubin, and Russell Simmons came in afterwards, when Rick Rubin and Jazzy J started the label over in the college. And then it started going on from there when Russell Simmons started taking over Def Jam, and many other labels was happening at the side, beside Def Jam. You still had Tommy Boy Records, you had Corey Robbins Profile Records, you had Zomba. What was Zomba label? Can't remember right off. But you had the ones that had Houdini and all them on their label.
And suddenly like new acts, like you said, Run DMC, you like to bring to the rock side, or the Beastie Boys bring it more to the punk side. LL Cool J even going back to the lovers rock R&B side of it. How did you see like the diversification of hip hop? Did you something?
That was a great time. It was a great time to have all those groups that was doing different music, as well as having a lot of the political side, like the X-Clan, Queen Latifah, Native Tongues, Q-Tip, you know, that was all doing different, the versatile De La Soul of different hip-hop, whereas you have today, you have more people trying to follow another person that had a hit. So if T.I. come out using the same vocoder that sound like Cher record, then everybody think T.I. made this, so you have another 50 records that sound like that, but don't give the credit back to people like Zapp or Larry Graham and all them that was doing it way back then, or Stevie Wonder.
That's true. Also, the thing we realized, vocoder all over the place. And like maybe I don't know if you want to answer this question. Like Russell Simmons. Like if you watch or see from today's point of view what he did, was it for the better or the worse of hip hop? Like really to like what you call apartheid. I don't know if that is what you mean. Really to focus on rap and to leave everything besides.
Well, Russell Simmons is a godfather of entrepreneurship for what he did to bring hip hop out to making it all around the world, to spread it to the people, and he was a great businessman. Just like you could give to, what's my man from Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and what he did with Profile, and then you had, what's his name from down south? Andre Arella, and the other one going, what's the one from New Orleans? Master P. And then Easy and what he did with bringing NWA. So you had a lot of great entrepreneurships that came out of hip hop that spread and helped people to make these songs to be on the scene and spread all over the world through hip hop. So we don't want to put it just on Brother Russell Simmons. We want to give all of them credit.
And maybe like word to Public Enemy and really the taking it on the political side, or sound-wise as well as political, but bring really to the forefront and bring radical issues across. Was that music or an attitude that you embraced? Or how?
Oh yeah, I loved it. Public Enemy, the X-Clan, the Black Watch movement. They was following everything what we was doing in the Universal Zulu Nation. So it's all family ties that was put together. It's just a shame that these so-called hip-hop radio stations today who claim to be hip-hop, but who are faking the funk on all the different flavors or categories of hip-hop music that has been out there for years and just playing what they want to play as this same 10 or 15 records over and over and over again. So that's why internet radio stations are starting to come strong. That's why the satellite radio stations are starting to come strong. Instead of stations like Clear Channel or MS radios trying to control everything.
Like NWA, end of the 80s, you're talking about Eazy-E already, like the production-wise, NWA, like when you got to hear the first pieces of it, like Dr. Dre's genius music-wise, did you grab it right away when you listened to the album the first time?
Well, I'm one of the ones who first broke NWA in New York. The West Coast was staying strong to the funk, whereas the East Coast started faking the funk, and then for many of the groups to survive, it was house music that started to take on the scene. But they thought they could get rid of many of the hip-hop people because the industry was always trying to, secretly to move the rappers or hip-hop out the way. So they thought house music was going to be the next big phenomenon. But it was a rapper that said, I could do that. Thus came the birth of hip house.
And the attitude, like the gangster attitude, was that nothing that you as the founder of the Zulu Nation, as a pacifist movement, did you embrace that, or how did you see that?
Well, I was playing a lot of the gangster records. We have the yin and the yang, the agreeable and the disagreeable. So, it's all part of the life. That's what makes the world go around. So we can't say we hip-hop and not play that part of hip-hop. We got to play all the different flavors of hip-hop. So now we need to get all these so-called radio stations, even today, to start playing all the different flavors of hip-hop and not just say, oh, it's all about gangster rap. No, that's what you made it to be because you wanted to keep a criminal-minded type of atmosphere out there among the youth out there for you could keep causing violence to make the police department keep making money, to make the jury system and to make the courts keep making money, and to make the jail system to keep making money off of many of these people's sorrows.
Misogyny with the aggression against gay people, just for the purpose of money, isn't that also something that you could also blame on the artist side?
Well, you could blame some of the artists, but you also got a lot of the so-called record labels who want certain sounds or who dictate. You know, you don't have where they did artist trainment, like what Motown did back in the 60s or Stax and Votes Records. You know, they groomed their artists. They made them to become respectful in the industry. You know, you had people who taught the Temptations, the Supremes, Martha and the Vandellas, and all these groups how to be artists, how to be respectful when they step in here. You know, step out into the atmosphere, step out into the entertainment world. So you had people that push for you to be crazy or to be wild or to say certain things on your recordings, and this is what many of the labels started dictating. You know, the same thing like they have people that sit behind closed door and decide that what type of fashion everybody should be wearing, what type of clothes they should be going 5 to 6 or 10 years from now. So the same thing happened in the hip hop movement. There was a secret society that decided to come and take over the movement, certain corporations, certain people who dictated and take the power out from many of the people who was really controlling hip-hop at the time and put the power into some other people to take it over, and now they control what is known as hip-hop culture today.
Okay. Like if you see, like look back on the 80s from today's point of view, and how everything was back then. Today, U.S.A. have even the first black president. How do you think? What impact did the 80s and the upcoming the hip hop movement have for the U.S.A. in 2009? What we witness here.
Well, hip hop on a political sense did more to bring more people together around the planet than all the politicians put together. It has brought people from many different nationalities and races to hear music differently, to play music differently, and to come into concerts and venues and love this style of music and to speak it in their own native tongue or on social issue or whether they want to party or speak on anything in life now, then, and thereafter.
Maybe two names of people that one guy I'm going to be meeting in Paris is D Nasty, who was one of the first also like Zulu Nation representatives in France. Did you meet him? Were you aware of him? Because he was, I think, like in the early 80s, the first guy to push it in France.
Yeah, D Nasty is the godfather of the hip hop movement in France, and a lot of respect to Queen Candy, who's the mother of all the Universal Zulu Nation hip hop that was happening in France at the time. We give respect to all of them and Afrika Bambaataa, who was the first to do Yo MTV Raps, who brought it over into England. These were all Zulus. The first hip-hop radio station was started with the Universal Zulu Nation. The person that took over the big, massive hip-hop scene of Zulu and started the first hip-hop TV show in the world was Sydney of the Universal Zulu Nation. So the Universal Zulu Nation plays a major role in many things that was going on with hip-hop cultures all over the planet. Torch in Germany, yes, sir.
Word about him?
Oh, Torch was a great person that was building his scene up over in Germany and was bringing people together, whether it was the Turkish community to the German community, to start understanding hip-hop more in the native tongue of Germany, where many of the artists in many of these countries was trying to rap all in English, and I was trying to tell them, no, you could take some of the English word, but rap in your native tongue. And now we have many stars from many countries, from France, Germany, Italia, to Africa, to the Isles of Pacific, to the West Indies, and all of South America.
How does it make you feel like to see like African people getting crazy on hip hop music?
Well, I feel good, and I feel humble, and I love it that many are doing it now in their native tongues, and whether they want to speak about social issues or down to just straight up party or just getting crazy, it's just good to know that here's all these people, some of these people have used hip hop to get out of some of the situations that they're in, and then there are others who have used it just to cause negativity, but like I said, also it's all part of the yin and the yang.
Like Africa, Islam, Charlie Funk, he really got strongly into dance music at the end of the decade, the beginning of the 90s. Was that like a natural evolution or just a curiosity of his? How do you see that?
Well, that's part of his universal Zulu Nation upbringing, the study all music and know how to play all music. But many of hip-hop DJs have branded out into other fields of music. The one that's the King of Trance now, from England. I know a lot of people hate it, but this guy used to be one of the high people that was dealing with hip hop at the time too. He did a remix of my Planet Rock record for the John Travolta movie, and there's even Tim Westwood used to be heavy into hip hop, and then there was one time when he left hip hop and started just doing reggae, but then came back home to hip hop. So you have other people who expanded out into other different music and made a living off of that.
And like you said, like you embrace lots of influences that came from England, also in dance. One record, Frankie's like doing a film about dance music. He asked me, like Arthur Baker, Freeze, I-O-U. Is that a song that you would play?
Yeah, I play I-O-U because that's Electro Funk. Arthur Baker was Electro Funk. He was our producer along with the great John Roby. So, anything that Arthur Baker or John Roby made for other artists, we would play straight out.
I think now I'm also okay. Maybe one question. Also, I think it relates to dance, especially to the dance scene, where a lot of gay people are involved, and also to hip hop, where a lot of gay people are brought down. Where does it really come from that not to integrate gays? In Germany, the same.
Well, I guess it comes from people not trying to understand and speak to each other and try to give an understanding of what's going on with the real world. So you got all different types of people on this planet, whether they gay, straight, or other people that are just crazy or wild, other people that wants to be gangsters and killers, other people that wants to be political activists. So it's just a people talking and trying to speak to each other, get an understanding of each other, understanding each other, understanding each ways of life, understanding their mind, understanding their country, understanding their language, understanding their culture, understanding their religion.
Maybe last question, I think, then. Oh, maybe two more. Like now that the U.S. has a black president, is it? Could you see that the struggle for blacks in this country or blacks in general is over, or has it just begun?
The struggle keeps continuing. Our people still trying to get the reparations for what happened back since the days of slavery. Also from stealing their land of their Moorish ancestry, who was the Aboriginal rulers of the Americas, because most people think that black people just came over here as slaves when they was already here when Christopher Columbus came in the year of 1492. So what many have called of these Native American Indians, who they many think are just the red man or the red woman, are also the Aboriginal people, who are the Omacs, who are the mothers and fathers of the Mayas and Aztecs, who are these so-called Moorish people, who many are called black or Negro or colored today. So America's so-called white history, the same as Europe's white history, has African Moorish history.
Why is it neglected? Why do people try to push it aside?
Well, that's because people has played mind games with many of the masses of the people on the planet. People have got caught up into robbing and stealing and greed instead of respecting what so-called black, brown, yellow, red, and white people has did to better life on the planet for all people to live better on the planet. So we got to give respect. If a black person was a scientist and he made this, and a brown, red, yellow, or white person has expanded on it, then we show the respect for what each has did to make life better for all humans on the planet.
And President Obama, do you see much of a BAM inside of what he's doing, like for the first 100 days, and the attitude that he started coming up into office?
Well, Obama is an intelligent man, a gifted man, and we just hope he stays for the people and be for the people. And if he stays with that, then he will have the people who will stay with him, not just over here, but all over the world. So we just sit and watch as time keeps going by.
Okay. I would say thank you very much.
Yes, sir.